Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Insurtech Breakfast. My name is Gabriela Trujillo, and I'm the Communications Manager at HITS, House of Insurtech Switzerland. So as you can see today, we are hosting the session from our offices, our beloved Innovation Garage, right in the heart of Generali Compound in Adlisville. So we're very thrilled to have you join us today in this rainy morning, as I said before, as we delve into the fascinating world of artificial intelligence and its crucial role in detecting, preventing pretty much, photo fakery in the insurance claims. So as you all know, in today's digital age, the photographic evidence has become a pain point for the insurance industry and most industries overall. And as we rely more on digital documentation, ensuring the integrity of these images is paramount. That's why we are here today, and the innovative technology of PhotoCert comes into play. So I don't want to steal the spotlight or anything. So without further ado, let's dive into today's agenda and hear from our esteemed speakers who will share their expertise and experiences. Before we do, as you all know, this session will be recorded. So if you don't want to appear in the video, just please turn off your cameras and enjoy the session incognito. But we truly encourage you to keep them on for the best online experience possible. Also, remember that at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A. So if you have any questions, just please write them on the chat and we will read them out loud later on, or just simply raise your hand and we will open the mics so you can interact as well. All right, so thank you again for joining us this morning, and let's begin. So Daniel, the stage is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us bright and early. I hope you've got a coffee and pastry to hand. We'll try and keep you awake during this morning. It is Friday after all, and it is bright and early. I'm here in London where it's just gone 8 a.m. So maybe a little bit earlier than it is for some of you out there. Maybe some of you are even more committed and it's earlier there. So I'll briefly introduce myself and then allow my colleague Siddharth to do the same. So I work with PhotoCert in the partnership side of things, looking for the right companies to work with that can truly benefit from the technology that we provide, because after all, that's the most important thing. We want to be able to deliver value, because then it helps us obviously communicate that with the next client. So my focus really is just making sure that our technology finds the hands that can make the best use of it, which is primarily within insurance. I'll hand over to my colleague Siddharth, who is the brain behind a lot of the magic that we produce. A lot of what we do wouldn't be possible with the amazing engineers that we have, and he is definitely one of those amazing engineers.
Hello, everyone. This is Siddharth. I'm a computer vision scientist at PhotoCert, and I'm in charge of a lot of the technologies for detection of photo fakeries or detection of generative AI. I'm broadcasting here from India, here in New Delhi. The temperature is about 46 degrees, so it's quite hot and it's nearly burning here, but I have my air conditioner on full blast, so I'll be able to entertain you for at least my segment of the presentation. And I believe Daniel is more than well versed to handle the rest. I'm looking forward to this year.
All right, guys, so let's crack on. So as Gabriela mentioned, it's no mystery how easy it is to kind of manipulate images, and it seems to be something that's touching every aspect and every corner of our lives. So I'm just going to share my screen to run through a few slides. So I'm going to cover a portion of the presentation that kind of delves into the scope of the issue and the relevance to the insurance world. And then we will get into a little bit of magic as to how we do some of the work that we do. Bear with me one moment. And hopefully everything will work as it should. Now, a quick check-in from anyone who's willing to say, is everyone seeing a bright screen with PhotoCert?
Yes.
Is that a yep? Amazing. Excellent. That's the most important thing. If this is working, then we're off to a great start. So as you're aware from signing up, this is titled Pixel Perfect, exploring AI's role in photo fakery. I hope all of you have had the opportunity to play around with a lot of the exciting AI tools out there. I know I've certainly had a lot of fun with them. I've seen some amazing examples, and what I've seen that's really interesting is how that's evolved, what feels like month by month. So the reality is it's something that's incredibly easy to do, and it's become a standard way of interacting and communicating. There are few decisions that we make in life that don't involve some sort of digital medium or interaction, whether it's pictures of what we're looking to buy, whether it's where we want to go on holiday next, or whether we're looking for our next soulmate or spouse through, online dating. These are all very important decisions. And of course, we need to safeguard how we make these decisions. And there's a few reasons why there's been this kind of, modernization towards it. And at least in the case of insurance, we've seen this kind of rise, and it really comes down to what we feel is three key aspects. One of those is, of course, the acceleration through the pandemic. We realized that we needed to be able to do things digitally because obviously there was very little way for people to actually have face-to-face contact. Process automation is another really important reason why we see this kind of adoption in insurance. Allowing things like straight-through processing obviously allows the interaction and extraction of data, be it digital documents, photos, or data generally. That's obviously very important. And of course, there's the generational shift. You have a situation where people want to be able to do things for themselves rather than spending, several minutes on hold and press one to speak to such and such. This is not an interaction people are typically enjoying. So with all this in mind, with this explosive growth in using digital mediums to interact, it poses a really important question, a question that is the focus of why PhotoCert exists. And it's whether you can trust what you see. And when it comes to, understanding this risk, we really break it down into a few key areas where we see manipulation. So you've got the area of photoshopping, or shallow fakes, as people call them, where you can take an image and manipulate aspects. So in this case, you see a vehicle where the background has been changed and the number plate's been changed, which of course completely changes the story that can be sold in and around it. And we know this is something that happens in the UK a lot with vehicles that are written off and deemed completely unusable. Then of course you have document fakery, which is incredibly easy to do because it doesn't really require much in the way of Photoshop skills. You can simply turn a small number into a very large number. And then, of course, the new kid on the block where a lot of us are, seeing a lot of growth in, which is generative AI. And that is the ability to, even without any skills, create a situation of our making, really. Using our imagination, we can pretty much create anything weird and wonderful, but it also allows you to create very specific things that fall within a narrative. And quite luckily, there has been a recent article that's come out, and somebody quite senior at Zurich actually has highlighted this big surge in manipulated images used in and around claims. So this is a news article from about 3 weeks ago, where we're seeing, where Zurich obviously came out and said that they are seeing a real increase in this kind of fakery. And one of the key reasons for that is, of course, the ease of doing so. It's something that absolutely anyone can do. There was a time, of course, where you needed a certain level of competency when it came to Photoshop, but now absolutely anyone can edit things. And just to give you guys a bit of a small kind of treat, it's an uninsurance related version, but a lot of you will be familiar with a story that hit the news a few months ago around Mother's Day, where our royal family put out an image, and I'll let the video speak for itself. But this is a very popular image that was circulated all across the world. Kate Middleton hadn't been seen for a while, the press started to speculate, and then Mother's Day, a photo was released. And then, of course, this photo was actually killed. But the interesting thing is this photo wasn't killed because any technology picked up on a forgery. It was because of a simple mistake in and around a hand. But we thought, for fun, let's feed this image into our system and see what we actually are able to extract and find out. And as you'll see in what looks like almost a horror movie, you can see that we were able to straight away see exactly where manipulation exists. And this is something that is applied to obviously everything we do, but it's always good to show it in a very kind of present and visible way. So as you can see, wherever there's bright white areas is where we've detected, traces of manipulation. So this is just a fun little tidbit to have shown you guys, just to kind of give you an idea of what can be done and how easy it is to do. And even with an infinite budget, you'd be surprised how many mistakes can be made. So another thing we commonly discuss with insurers is what the cost of fraud is. It's a difficult thing, primarily because, to measure fraud, you're only really measuring the fraud that's caught, not what actually, slips under the radar. If a claim is made fraudulently, it's been paid out, essentially it's kind of slipped through the system. There is no necessarily generated figure. But we do have a few numbers, of course, and you can see some of them here. There's an estimated 1.5 billion pounds of fraud in the UK when it comes to insurance every year. Again, this is very much a ballpark figure based on accumulation of lots of different figures. But as you can see, across the board, there are increases. And a lot of this is to do with the increase of cost of living, of course. It's a very low level, accessible crime for a lot of people. The insurance fraud isn't always a completely fabricated thing. You have people, of course, that exaggerate claims so that they can, squeeze a little bit more value out of them. So the thing is, when we look at these figures, it's quite concerning because, as I mentioned, this is only what we can see. The reality is, when it comes to manipulated images, it's very few that are actually inspected by claims analysts and fraud experts. And the reason for that, of course, is the cost associated with doing so. So although we suspect about 15% of all claims, or it's suspected that 15% of all claims have some form of fraud in them, less than 2% are actually analyzed by claims or fraud expert. When you add to that when it comes to document fraud, less than 10% is visible to the naked eye, it does present, quite concerning figures, especially in and around documents, because like I say, even if we are taking it a little bit further and investigating these documents, you are in a situation where it's not visible to the human eye. So you are left, unfortunately, still, guessing, because, without a technology applied, you are left in a situation where you are making very important decisions on very sensitive and inaccurate information quite often. So to give you guys a little bit more magic and technology as to what's actually underpinning what we're actually doing to get to a point where we're able to look at an image and detect things, I will hand over to my colleague Siddharth.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Daniel. I'll take it from here. So this segment actually underlines a little bit of what we are actually doing under the hood, so that we are able to, let's say, detect all these different types of forgeries, and obviously a lot of the mischief that happens in and around that. I hope my voice is loud and clear. Well, perfect. I'll be leaving a good review on Amazon for this headphone. All right, so here we go. So is the screen also? Can you see the screen also? All right, perfect. All right, so I'd like to start off with a pretty simple question. So what could be the commonality, let's say, between these individuals? So I'm not talking about the differences. There's the difference of the classes. There's the difference of ethnicity. But what could be the commonality between these individuals? And there could be many answers for the same, maybe they have the same sort of a gray background, or maybe they are relatively young, and XYZ. But the real true commonality between these individuals is that they don't exist. These are completely fake generative AI images of two people, which basically have no bearing whatsoever. So there's no one who looks exactly like this. It's completely fake. And we must actually understand how such fake images are created. And this is just, we're talking about one of these things where we are completely creating another image from scratch. So there are many ways to create the fake images. There are generative adversarial networks, variational autoencoders, or new kid on the block called stable diffusion, which is something that we are going to talk about. And it's pretty interesting. So you'll also get to know a little bit about how this thing actually works, and hopefully make the magic a little bit more logical. So essentially you have, let's say, a real image, and you essentially make a noisy image out of that. It's very straightforward, nothing complicated here. And what you do is you progressively degrade the image unless it is nothing but just pure static noise. That's essentially what a stable diffuser does. Now, the magic actually happens here, where there's something called a noise predictor, and it essentially looks at a pair of images and basically just calculates how much noise was added and what type of noise was added. And it does this for millions and millions of images, and for millions and millions of degraded images. So it gets really good at predicting the amount of noise that is added to a particular image. And basically it can understand what type of noise is added to that image so that we get to this particular pure noise example. But that's only one part of the thing. The real magic comes when you just provide it randomly generated random noise. So it's just completely pure noise, static. It's not coming from an image, it's just randomly generated. And what it tries to do is it tries to estimate the noise in this completely random noise. And it essentially tries to minimize the particular noise by going from this randomly generated noise towards something that it thinks might not contain as much noise. And bingo, just by this particular process, from completely random noise, we are able to create something which is extremely realistic. So this image that you're seeing of the person, this is also a completely fake image. No person like this exists. And this is actually really special because essentially you're able to create nothing out of thin air. And this technology has been getting better and better since the last 5 years. And stable diffusers have become extremely good at creating all types of images, not just faces. You can provide it a context. It can generate you an image with, like, let's say, a car with a scratch, or it can generate an image with, let's say, a broken pipe in the house or something like that. And it will be extremely difficult for a human to understand whether this is a real image or a fake image. But that's where we come in. So now we've talked about the real, the fake images. We can also talk a little bit about real images. So this is essentially your smartphone, your camera, your DSLR. So this is essentially what happens. You have a lens which focuses all the photons onto an image sensor, and that particular image sensor essentially converts the photon to electron, which converts it to electricity, and which essentially gets converted zeros and ones in the image. And then finally you have the image data. Now, every single component of this pipeline is susceptible to noise. And by this noise, I mean the noise that nature grants us. So optical aberration noise, essentially photovoltaic fluctuations, or unique post-processing pipeline, like let's say a Nikon camera and a Kodak camera might have a different processing pipeline. So all of these things contribute to the noise of a real image also. So when we take, let's say, a real image, so let's say this Ukrainian chess grandmaster, Evgeny Sveshnikov. This is his real image. So if we take, let's say, a real image and we try to extract the noise, we get something, well, just like a noise. And then when we try to convert this noise into, let's say, something called a Fourier transform into the frequency spectrum, we get something which is also unremarkable. There is nothing special about this Fourier transform. It's just basically static. Similar to what the noise was. Maybe in the noise you can make out a little bit of the contours of the image, but the Fourier transform is basically just that, just static noise. Now let's perform the same analysis, but for the fake person that we had in the stable diffusion. Let's take out the noise from there and let's convert it to the Fourier transform. And there you start seeing something really interesting. So the stable diffusion noise in the Fourier transform and the real image noise in the Fourier transform look pretty different. You can see that there are periodic artifacts in this noise that's generated. And that's no surprise, right? Because the noise generated in the stable diffusion to create this fake person was coming from a computer. And computers, being pretty deterministic, cannot actually make something completely random. And that's like a fallacy of computers, because if you have 1 plus 1, it's always going to give you 2. So for computers to generate something that's truly random, they cannot do that. So even the randomness in computers is known as pseudo-random. So it's not truly random. And that's why even the noise that they generate is not truly random. There is some artifact, there is some periodicity in those noise. And this is not just for stable diffusion. For majority of the architectures, like say the GANs, the training TAMs, the DALI, the ADMs, the latent diffusion, the glide model, everyone, all of these models have this type of periodic artifacts in their noise spectrum. And this is something that we can leverage pretty easily to understand whether something is real or something that has been generated by an AI. That actually makes it really easy. But the problem is, since researchers know this, they are coming up with ways to make it extremely difficult to understand this type of noise. So it's basically like a cat and mouse game. So researchers come up with something which is really advanced, which can bypass all the detectors and the detecting. And another group of researchers essentially have to come up with more sophisticated algorithms to catch them. But this is just one part of the whole story, right? So not everyone is doing generative AI for let's say insurance frauds, right? So you're not generating a completely different image of a car because that image of the car might not be your car. So something that also takes place is, what about the more common forgeries? Let's say this is just like a car, it has a scratch on it, and somebody wants to, let's say, fake the particular thing and say that, let's say there's no scratch and it's pretty clean. What they can do is essentially with anything, let's say Photoshop, completely remove the scratch from the image and it looks basically brand new. So we went from a car which was obviously scratched, the door, and to something that's completely new. And there are like uh, a dozen of ways to understand, and a dozen of ways to, let's say, employ different algorithms to understand this. But since we were talking about noise, let's keep talking about noise. So we can also, let's say, do something called a compressed sensing analysis. We compress both the images in different domains, different spectrums to understand. And you can already see that there is something off with the second image, which was supposedly clean. With just a little bit of image processing, we can actually highlight the exact area where the forgery has taken place. And this was like a blur forgery with a little bit of in painting. This is easily accessible, easily done in Photoshop also. And because of that, we can see that what kind of what areas were actually, let's say, forged. And that actually brings us to slightly is kind of an ironic thing. The thing that gives away forgeries is not the content but the noise, which is which is something very something which was extremely important for a lot of researchers, because we were always focused on looking at the faces, looking at the scratches to understand what is something that could be wrong. But we basically gave up and we understood that the generative AI, or even humans who are doing this advanced photo manipulation with tools like Photoshop, they're actually really good at doing exactly what they want. And what they're not really good at is taking care about the noise, taking care about the other things that could change in an image. And that essentially brings us to a close of this session. So this is just one particular thing that I had. It was just about the noise that we are having and how images can actually be deciphered using just something that we take for granted, right? So noise. And I'll hand it back to Daniel so he can let you guys know how we can actually incorporate all of this into something that can be usable by the end users. Thank you very much.
Right, everyone. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I think it's always great. I personally love it whenever Siddharth is internally offering to share his wisdom, because I'm always blown away by just how much depth there is to what we do. Obviously, I only ever see the end product, But as Siddharth mentioned, I'll touch very lightly on how this kind of looks in a actual use case. So within actual systems that insurance companies are using, you guys would have had a peek at the dashboard as how it looks, but it is simply something to kind of house our API. The reality is we can give as little or as much information within a a photo or information in and around a document as the end user needs to see. We can even simplify things to a point where it's a simple green, amber, or red, so people know the risk parameters in and around an image. And then by clicking said shield, they can be a little bit deeper. But what we're really interested in, and where I think our technology is most effective, is when we look at process automation. Because one thing I haven't touched on is automated processes do not look for whether an image is real or fake. They simply look at what's in an image, extract the information, and even with the the fake people that you saw in Siddharth's presentation, any computer model that can read images will still read those as people, because that is essentially what they are. The problem is if you're using an automated process or an AI to automate things, it doesn't factor that in. If it sees a scratch on a car, it will read it as a scratch on a car. And if you have a process that automates low value claims, it will still accept that as the right input. Something we're doing with a client in Italy, which is really interesting, is through establishing that the images provided are indeed accurate, we're able to create an automation that speeds up low value claims and repetitive claims, because obviously there's enough information and data and we know what the cost of certain damage is. So here's a water leak estimation where we know that the image is in fact genuine. We can use our technology to isolate where the damage is. We can approximate its size. We can approximate its severity through its shade. We can see through the surroundings a little bit more information. And by splitting everything up, we're able to kind of create an assessment of the gravity of the damage and effectively triage and decide whether it's worthwhile going further. But that really concludes the presentation, and these are some of the partners we work with. And if there's only one thing to take away, guys, it's really just that we can't possibly allow for claims to be automated if the data that is being used to directly decide on what's happening within those claims is tampered. I think one recent meeting that put it beautifully was that if you have a system where it's garbage in, then it's going to be garbage out. And we're firm believers that when it comes to this kind of claims data, it's very important to have it accurately. And that concludes the presentation. There's some details here, and obviously I'm sure Gabrielle will be more than happy to share my details out at the end of this session. But at its core, we know that AI is a hot topic on everyone's desk, be it insurance or other industries. So if you are in touch with anyone that is losing sleep at night in and around this technology and could benefit from using this technology, feel free to introduce us. Or if you're just curious about how we work a little bit more, feel free to reach out. But that concludes the us speaking at you portion of the presentation. And now we will open the floor and do our very best to answer some questions. Hopefully we're able to answer them. And yeah.
Thank you so much. It was very, I mean, it's mind-blowing pretty much, all the technology that goes into these type of trying to figure out, the content of these real photos that are kind of like the base of this industry. So thank you very much, Daniel and Siddharth. Does anybody have a question? Let's open the floor for the Q&A that I mentioned at the beginning of the session. If you have a question and you want to intervene, just pretty much raise your hand and we'll open your mic, or you can type it on the chat and I'll read it out loud. I know Killian had a question, but I think it was answered already.
I do have another one, but I couldn't
Okay,
find the
good.
hand button, and I was trying a new feature of Zoom recognize gesture, and that didn't work. No, thank you very much for the insights, and I think especially the part by Siddharth on this noise recognition that was it at least helped me quite a lot to understand how that exactly worked. The question maybe, Daniel, if you could deep dive on how would such a solution be implemented? Because I mean, it is a new process, so it is something that will have to be added on top of the way that of how people work, or maybe this can be integrated smoothly in the current way of how people, especially on the claim side, handle this sort of things. I don't know if you could give a bit more insights on this.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely explain to a high level. The way we kind of see our technology applied isn't to change any existing processes, and that's a twofold thing. We know that change is difficult. We know that it's expensive. And I'm sure a lot of insurers have gone through the process of embedding new technologies only to find, further down the line that it's not being adapted by, claim handlers for a mixture of reasons. It can be onboarding, it could be complexity. So the way we envision our technology used and the way we work with our customers is really just to provide an insight in the corner of an image or an asset, whether it's a document or a picture, where it simply gives it a grading. And that is done through a very versatile API. Obviously, every integration we do is got a little bit of difference to it. This is why we have amazing people like Siddharth involved. Just yesterday, we're speaking with a new client where privacy and where the information is held is a crucial thing. And within a short conversation with Siddharth, we already had an idea of how to overcome that. So without us even seeing the images, it's possible for us to produce results. Just to give you an idea of the versatility of integration, but our goal really is to work alongside existing solutions rather than completely change how claims are done. Because at the end of the day, the insurance companies we deal with know far better than we do as to how best to deal with claims. What we want to do is give them insight to make better decisions rather than making decisions for them, if that makes sense.
Cool, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Kenyon. Does anybody else? Oh, I see it. Oh, the chat. Okay, go. All right. So Luca has a question. Thanks for the super cool presentation. Just one question. What about PDF documents?
Yeah, I mean, I will very loosely say that yes, our technology does cover PDF documents. Siddharth might have a bit more to add in and around it. There is a completely different methodology used, but it is something that's covered. I don't know if in one or two sentences you have anything to add to that, Siddharth.
Sure. So yeah, we do deal with the PDF documents as well, and the structure of a PDF is completely different from how we handle, let's say, images, and because of that, there's basically a lot of different types of technologies and a lot of different techniques that we use for PDFs. More of those technologies have actually to do with the source attribution, identifying the source of the particular PDF, also identify what type of changes have been made, because when you have something, it's very different from an image. It could come from, let's say, 1,000 different sources, and you don't really know what's happening where. But everything, any type of manipulation, even in PDFs, it does leave some traces, and these traces could be in the form of byte string changes. It could be in the form of semantic header changes. It could be a lot of different things. It could simply be just a misalignment of the objects of the PDF. So there are lots of different ways to make a PDF suspicious, although it is very difficult and very different from images to basically give a gravity to this suspicion. But we are getting really close to understanding that as well.
All right. All right. Thank you, Siddharth. All right, Sam has another question. How long until fraudsters can manipulate noise images as well?
All right, Daniel, I can take that one as well. How long until the fraudsters manipulate images? Well, this happened about like 2 years ago as well. So it's already yesterday. So there are many technologies. If Sam, you would like to read up on it, you can check about something called spectral GANs or something like that. So they are able to manipulate noise as well, but then they loosen up in other areas. So if you're really able to, if you're able to manipulate noise to the level of, let's say, randomize it to the level of what we get in real images, then your images themselves lose a lot of spatial resolution, and they introduce something known as compression artifacts. And there are a lot of different things that you can do, because you can work with them together, but then there are still more advanced technologies. And the noise portion of the thing, which is really interesting, is because it really gets the point across to a lot of people, but it's just one of the many ways we can actually detect inconsistencies in images compared to the original images. And the noise being one of them. Surely you can cover up noise, but then you are pulling the rug from underneath something else, and we can then catch you on that particular area. So it's always like this cat and mouse race, like I told you. You can always start getting good, and when you get good, we increase our level and we get good as well. So that's how it is. Thank you.
Yeah, so that was actually the question. So it's a race. So you cannot just sleep for a few days, and your technology you need to update it, okay, continuously.
Yes, and it's especially relevant for every new technology that comes in. Let's say 5 years ago, we had no idea about the power of stable diffusion, but now we do. And somebody who was a fraud or a forgery expert 5 years ago could not have predicted a way to understand how stable diffusion will be able to detect this right now. We can create a lot of these large foundational model systems where we can try to estimate the kind of things that's going to happen. And one interesting approach is not to recognize anything fake at all. Just recognize whether it is true or not. That essentially takes care of every case, every other case outside. So it doesn't matter what kind of a forgery algorithm that you're using. We don't care about identifying your algorithm. We just care about identifying whether the image is true or not, like whether it's genuine or not, and that can actually work. But it's obviously you can't sleep over something like that, and always think that a few years down the line your algorithms will still catch everything. But yeah, it's a work in progress, and it always will be. If that answers the question.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Sam. All right, so Alejandro has another question. He says, thank you for the interesting presentation. Can the technology also identify video fakes?
Sure. So Daniel, if you want to take that.
Oh yeah, no, sure. So I was just going to say no. In short, it's not an area that we're focused on, but it is a question we get often. I'm sure we have the right minds to tackle such a problem, but it hasn't become an issue just yet, especially with the customers we're dealing with, because quite often video is used as an alternative to photos to circumvent the risk that photos present. That's why a lot of KYC systems that we use today will actually require that you move your head around and do all sorts of movements. It's not necessarily to scan your face to a great degree. It's because the level of risk presented when you're providing a video or a moving image kind of circumvents that risk, because of course it's telling you to look left, telling you to look right, and so on and so forth. But no, it's not something we're doing at the moment. But who knows? We might have to change the name if we go down that road.
All right, thank you. All right, there's 2 more questions on the chat. So Ahmad says, thank you for the interesting presentation. Do you have some examples of gain generated by such technologies for some of your customers?
That is a great question. I don't actually have something to hand that I can comfortably share, because I would be approximating rather than giving actual figures. But if you reach out, I can certainly provide something. So the challenge we have is that the technology is used in different ways in different cases. So in the case of the water leak damage, that's a process automation use case where the gains come really from, rather than the reduction of fraud, through the expeditation of claims being done. In terms of detecting worrying images, we're more on the side of providing the insights and then letting claims handlers obviously decide. And the reason for that is you sometimes do get manipulation of an image for good reasons. Some images have a timestamp or a date clamped in it. And of course, our technology knows to ignore those kinds of artifacts, because we know that those are simply just revealing the date and time of an image. But there are other reasons. Some people apply a filter. Some people have all sorts of reasons for having some sort of manipulation. We will simply highlight that and give the claim handler a decision at that point. So we quite often don't see the outcome of that information. We provide the insight or the lens to provide a bit of clarity.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. All right, there's one more question. It's from Klaus, and he says, do I understand correctly that if your solution rates an image, an image as manipulated, it definitely is? So no error margins, so your margin errors.
Sure. So I'll take that one then, if that's okay.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing like there's nothing that is absolutely certain. Even images taken from a standard iPhone, which basically have no manipulation applied to them, essentially have like at least a dozen of pre-processing filters applied by the iPhone itself. So the raw image will be very different to what actually gets saved on in the memory of your phone. So whenever we try to determine something, there is always a probability that we give across with that. There is no white and black here. Unless we know and we set up a threshold previously, we work with the customer to understand what kind of error margin is good enough for us to say this is certainly suspicious. So we can work with the clients in that way to understand something. But any particular technology or claim, no technology in fact can actually claim that the image or let's say the document is a 100% forged or 100% genuine. Certainly whatever analysis that you're performing on it might return a yes or a no, but in the end it's always better to provide let's say triage that particular result in the terms of priority. This is really suspicious, this is kind of, and this is basically clean. So we can do that thing as well, and that's how it generally does. That's generally how it plays out.
Okay, thank you for that. We have another question. Martha is asking, when adding or removing elements in an image, should the approach be the same or should be considered different noise techniques?
Okay, so let me get this right. So when adding or removing elements in an image, should the approach be the same or should it be considered different from noise techniques? So there are many ways, and it's not as straightforward as just that. So if you're adding another element to the image, is it coming from the same image or is it coming from a different image? If it's coming from the same image, probably the noise background will be the same. But if it's coming from a different image, it could be different. If you're trying to take away elements from that image, what are you placing in place of the element that you've just removed? Are you just placing a blank background? Are you filling it up, or are you placing something else? So all these things generate a lot of information for us to understand whether or not something is forged or whether or not something has been faked. But the use cases and basically the different types of things that you're having, it could be different. And noise estimation techniques is something that has worked really well for a lot of simple forgeries. But something that's coming up which is like extremely complex, let's say nowadays you can just give ChatGPT an image of, let's say, something and ask it to modify only a part of it. So would you consider that modified image to be generated, or would you consider it to be Photoshop or forged? It's neither, because the manipulated elements are actually generated by an AI, but the rest of the image is still yours. So there are edge cases that we also have to deal with here. It's very different, and it's not really easy to answer how a particular technology would fare when adding or removing elements, because there are tons of ways to add and remove elements from images. And that's my 2 cents on this.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. We have one of the last questions on the chat. So it's from Alexander. Thanks for this very interesting presentation. Is it possible to identify fakes geodata?
So by geodata, you mean geographical data, right? So basically the geographical data is not actually the part of an image. It's essentially metadata. And if you're linking a geodata to, let's say, an image, you're essentially linking the metadata of that particular geographical content to that particular data. Yes, there are ways and methods to understand GIS, geographical information. So there are parts that can be understood, but that is a completely different technology, or let's say a completely different semantic analysis than images. And that more has to do with integration of the particular image, integration of the headers, integration of the metadata analysis components, and that. So it's not coming under image processing or image analysis. It's not coming under generative AI. Can geodata be faked? Just to conclude the answer, can the geodata be faked? Yes. Can it be identified? Probably not always. Probably not always. But yes, if it's something that's something that we have a previous, let's say, context of where the image is being generated from or something like that, it is still possible. But yeah, the fake geodata is something that is not generally, let's say, recognizable.
All right. Thank you so much, Alexander, for that question. All right. Does anybody else have a question for Daniel or Siddharth? This is your moment to shine. All right. All right, guys. I think this session has been mind-blowing, not just for us here, but for everybody in the audience. I just want to thank you both, not just for being here and sharing all your knowledge, but for being such awesome presenters and keeping the energy up, the energy levels up all the time. I really appreciate it. And we at HITS, we are super proud to bring you to the table and to bring you, to bring this topic pretty much to all of our audience. So thank you very much. We will share the recording because I know some people got jumped off and got reconnected later on. So no worry, we will share the presentation on our channels, on our LinkedIn channel. If you don't follow us, please do. There will be the complete recording video of the session, so you can watch it as many times as you liked. Okay, so for the ones that are one of the regulars, you know that at the end of each session, we take kind of like a snap, a photo of everybody. So if you feel comfortable with it, just turn on your cameras and let's see each other, and I'll just take a few clips and then I will share it. All right, cool, nice to see you all. All right, okay, here we go. Nice. All right, thank you so much. I'll take another one just in case. This is so cool. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. All right,
Thank
and
you,
just
Daniel.
yeah, thank you.
Thank
And
you
just
all.
before you guys go, just before you guys leave, the next Insurtech Breakfast will be on June 28th. We will send you more information your way for sure, but just save the date. We will have another nice session as well, and we're preparing it for you. So we'll keep in touch. Thank you so much again, Daniel. Siddharth, thank you so much. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great
Thanks,
weekend,
Daniel.
everybody. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Happy weekend, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.